Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Nightcast, this new Knights of Columbus webcast brought to you from our set at the St. John Paul II National Shrine in Washington, D.C. My name is Jonathan Reyes, Senior Vice President for Communications and Strategic Partnerships, and I'll be your host for this new webcast series. We hope to keep you informed and help you live as Knights by sharing stories of Knights in action throughout the world, letting you know about the latest work of the Order, and helping you grow in your faith. Brothers, we find ourselves living in unprecedented times with numerous challenges. This webcast is meant to help us, together, across the world, meet these challenges as Knights and to strengthen our spiritual brotherhood. This series is a free, exclusive benefit of the Knights of Columbus for members. If you'd like to register for the series, simply go to kfc.org/Nightcast to make sure you get future episodes. In this first episode, we'll be doing something special. Supreme Knight Carl Anderson will be retiring at the end of the month, and in just a moment he'll join me to speak about his leadership of the Order over the last 20 years and the lasting impact of his legacy. However, to kick off this new series at the start of this new year, we're going to first take a look back at the work of the Order during an especially challenging but incredibly fruitful past year, to reflect on everything we've accomplished and how it points to where we're going next.
Still got some way to go. It's beating down my soul. Never ending race. I feel that fire burn with every twist and turn. Feel the shake. And when the sun goes down, all the stars will shine. I will stand wherever I between my dreams, running high on steam through the night. 'Cause when the sun goes down, all the stars will shine. I will stand where I
This month marks a major event in the history of the Order, the election of a new Supreme Knight. Supreme Knight Carl Anderson will be retiring at the end of the month, and he'll be succeeded by Patrick Kelly, who was elected earlier in the month and who begins his term on March 1st. To discuss this historic moment in our history and reflect on the last year as well as a lifetime of service, I'm now joined by Supreme Knight Carl Anderson. Mr. Anderson has led the Order as its 13th Supreme Knight for over 20 years. He brought to the Knights his background of making significant contributions in the realms of the church and government. Since the beginning of his time as Supreme Knight, when he dedicated his tenure and our order itself to Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mr. Anderson has contributed to the building of a civilization of love. Under his leadership, the order has worked with 3 popes, seen the beatification of its founder, grown to 2 million men, protected Catholic families with its insurance program, launched its Asset Advisors program, upheld the dignity of life, defended persecuted Christians, helped build the domestic church, and put its faith into action. Mr. Anderson, thank you very much for being here with us today and leading off the first episode of this new series. It's great to have you.
Well, it's great to be with you, and it's a great initiative to start, so happy to be here.
So it's been quite a year. It's been quite 20 years. And I imagine it's almost impossible not to look back on that time and have some reflection. I know how busy you've been, but you've been able to reflect somewhat. I have to tell you from the outside looking in, one of the amazing things of those 20 years is you've served as Supreme Knight for 3 different popes. And I know you've had relationships with all of them. I guess I just want to hear about that. What was it like to serve for 3 popes? What were they like? Any great stories you can tell from that time?
Well, I'll try to condense this in a short amount of time. I think, as Supreme Knight, meeting 3 popes is a tremendous privilege and opportunity to represent the order. But really, in each of those 3 very different pontificates, 3 very different personalities, 3 very different pastoral styles, you might say. And always the question for me is, what is God saying with this Pope for the Knights of Columbus? Obviously, we can't do everything, but what is his message really for us? What is it that we need to take to heart in this pontificate? So, of course, with John Paul II, his emphasis on the family, his great encyclical on pro-life, Evangelium Vitae, his great document on the role of the laity, all extremely important, I thought. And of course, his great struggle for the liberation of Europe, the collapse of the Soviet Union, religious liberty, human dignity, all of that was very much a part of how can we help? How can we be a part? How can we seize this moment in history with this great pontificate? How can we contribute as Knights of Columbus? The big question. I remember getting the privilege of having breakfast with the Holy Father after attending his Mass or being invited for lunch. And everybody, well, what did you get to eat, all of this? Well, the answer is not very much, because he kept asking questions. So you get invited, they put a nice meal in front of you, but then you're so busy talking, just about the first thing you do afterward is go out to breakfast and have something to eat. So I think for him, really, this was one of the great things of his pontificate. He really wanted to know what people were thinking, how they were being impacted, how they saw things going beyond the official communication channels within the church or the diplomats who would come in and speak to him. But what, at the local level, at the ordinary, you might say, people, what were they experiencing in the church? What were their challenges, their problems, their aspirations? Very much part of his pontificate. Benedict XVI, his first encyclical, Deus Caritas Est, about charity, about God is love. I said, wow, if there's anything really meant for us, Knights of Columbus, our first principle is charity, so let's really try to understand what he's doing. The focus on Jesus of Nazareth, his books, all his encyclicals, looking at this. So I thought a great blessing for the church to have a pope so committed to charity. And now, Pope Francis, so many things going on in his pontificate, but I think this real love for the poor and the marginalized, going, as he says, to the periphery. And I'll never forget the moving scene where he washes the feet on Thursday in Holy Week. And that month in Colombia, we opened Colombia, and there was a story about Brother Knights washing the feet of homeless. Not on Thursday, but just as part of their outreach to serving these poor men. I said, my goodness, see the parallel? See the parallel for what we're doing? And So I think as we go forward, we have to look at these great popes and say, what is it specifically that they're saying to us? What is, again, we can't do everything, but there are certain things we can do to be part of this moment in the church, to assist the Pope where we can, and that's the great beauty of the Knights of Columbus, I think, and so it's the great takeaway I have.
You know, that makes me think also not only of serving the Pope in particular, but serving the margins has been at the center of the last 20 years. You've seen natural disasters, disasters that were man-made as well. We've seen all kinds of challenges in terms of economics, and lately we've seen a pandemic. You've been able to visit what our brothers are doing, frontline stuff, right at the cusp of the actual service. What are some memories you have of, I don't know, powerful moments where you've been there on the front line, seen what the brothers are doing and what it's meant to you?
I would say the first powerful moment is 9/11. Actually being in my office right here, watching the first tower burning, watching the second tower coming down. The next day meeting with the supreme officers and saying, we're going to do the Heroes Fund. We're going to set $1 million up to help, because already then we knew there were going to be hundreds of first responders killed. And we began that. But then I went to Ground Zero. I saw the Brother Knights who were in what was first rescue and then the sad work of recovery. The other Brother Knights who were there assisting in whatever way they could went down with the Supreme Chaplain, who was Bishop Tom Daly at the time, the Bishop of Brooklyn, said Mass. So for so many of the Catholic men working there, was with the NYPD chaplain, member of the Knights of Columbus, Father Romano. And so came back from that experience and said, look at the sacrifice. Look at the tremendous sacrifice. And we had many members who died that day. But then we had more who died in Afghanistan and then Iraq. So my question was, what can the Knights do to honor, to do our part for the great sacrifice that so many of our other Brother Knights are making on the front line there? We can't be on the front line, but we can do what we can to support them, support their families, support the national effort. And the most important thing we could do, I think, is to provide the kind of support for families, but also to provide the spiritual support. This is one of the terrible things. We have so few Catholic chaplains that when we put our Catholic military in harm's way, oftentimes they have no chance for the sacraments while they're deployed. And so we began an early effort to help our Catholic chaplains, to get more of them, to find ways to support them, and to find ways that our councils could help the military deployed overseas in harm's way to have a safe space for their Catholicity and to have a brotherhood among Catholic Knights of Columbus brothers. So that was number one. And then we saw how this could unfold in other ways with natural disasters. I remember the tornadoes that came through Joplin, Missouri. And if you've ever seen a tornado devastation, it's like they just come through and grind everything up. Everything is broken and in splinters in a way. And there was these people there with nothing left. What are we going to do? And I remember a woman saying, well, don't worry, the Knights of Columbus are coming. Realizing just at the local level what the care and concern and work of Brother Knights can make for so many. So from that, we began to build the Second Responders Program for hurricanes, for wildfires, for earthquakes. It's been our tradition going back to even as early as the famous San Francisco earthquake in 1905 and other disasters. We've been there, and it's made a tremendous difference in people's lives. So that's maybe the most mission-oriented impact of of an opportunity early on in being Supreme Knight. But that's been confirmed so many times. People will say, well, you get to meet the Pope, you get to meet presidents, prime ministers. Yes, and it's wonderful and it's a privilege to do that, but you know, you don't remember a lot of that. You remember some, but you don't remember a lot. But I'll tell you, putting a little girl in a wheelchair, and you know, her parents had to carry her because the family's so poor, they can't even afford crutches. But the girl in the wheelchair, and she looks up at you and she says, "You're my angel." You always remember that. And our brother knights do that millions of times, hundreds of thousands of times. And so I guess if you're leading a political organization, the most important event would be meeting the president or sitting down and lobbying about a policy. And those are very important. And the Knights have a role, like we did in Iraq for persecuted Christians. Very proud of that. But we're a charitable organization, and so when you see how you change lives through what you're doing, in not just little ways, but in drastic ways. And you see an orphan in Haiti take her first steps on her artificial legs after having them amputated from that terrible earthquake there. Those are the kinds of things that you remember, but also what makes you get up every morning and work even that much harder. And so and the Brother Knights see that at the local level, and we certainly see it from Supreme. But those are the memorable things that you take away.
You know, that struck me, what you just said, in relation just to the last year, where I've had more of a front row seat. I could see some things in relation to the pandemic and the Leave No Neighbor Behind program. And in addition to everything you've said, one of the things I was struck by is the Knights at the local level being quite creative, finding ways to get things done. So it's not just a willingness to serve, which is beautiful and essential and part of who we are, but it's almost like the spirit of Blessed Father McGivney in its creativity. So guys figuring out ways to build confessionals or get to people even though you have to social distance. And is that just built into the charism of the Knights, this ability to, this certain kind of continuity with the way in which we've served and loved, but a creativity and ability to just find a way forward at the local level?
Well, I think it's part of the genius of Father McGivney. You know, the famous commentator on American life in the 19th century, Alexis de Tocqueville, in his book Democracy in America, talks about this unique American spirit of associations and voluntarily coming together to do good in the community. Well, Father McGivney saw how to harness that for Catholic men. And I think one of the great things about the Knights of Columbus, this system, this network, is empowerment. And Father McGivney didn't seek to control everything. He saw that there was a creative, you could say, genius of the people in their local community about how to solve their own problems. And you give them also the spiritual empowerment, I would say, of dedicating their life to principles such as charity, unity, and brotherhood. Then you kind of unleash their creativity. Now go do it in your local community. And we see this time and time and time again. Some of the best programs in the Knights of Columbus originated at the local level.
All last year hasn't been all bad news. The pandemic's certainly a great challenge. There's also some great news, namely the beatification of our founder. What was that like for you, having worked on this for so long and just to be there when this actually happened, this beatification?
Well, you know, the effort for the cause for canonization of Father McGivney has been through my entire time as Supreme Knight, something we've all worked on, prayed about. And so I think to see this come to, in a way, fruition for the first important step, that is the beatification, the realization of Father McGivney's personal sanctity, and the fact that he is listened to in heaven, his prayers are answered, and so we should continue to have this close relationship with him. is really, I would say, the crowning event of my time as Supreme Knight. And of course, why now? Why now? It's not for Father McGivney's good. You can't improve on where he is right at the moment. So why is it this moment for the beatification? A priest who suffered and died during the pandemic of his lifetime is now raised up as an intercessor for people suffering during another global pandemic, providential. Why in this moment of the history of the Knights of Columbus does Providence say, now look to him at this way? So we have to put that in our heart. We have to think more about it, meditate on it, reflect on what this means each for us individually, but also for the order. How do we as the Knights of Columbus draw closer to him spiritually, individually, in our councils, and as the organization as a whole? Is very important.
One of the geniuses of Father McGivney, you've said this many times, is the way in which he envisioned the lay involvement in the church and cooperation with priests. And you have had the privilege of working with a man who we have to call your friend, Archbishop Laurie, for a long time, for 15 years as Supreme Knight, but you knew him long before that. What does that real cooperation look like?
Well, when I became state deputy in the District of Columbia, I asked Bishop William Laurie if he would be my state chaplain, and I was so very privileged that he agreed to do that. And so we've been working closely ever since that time. I've found over the course of being a knight, he's been so important, his advice, his counsel, his prayers, in moving forward, testing ideas, guiding, thinking. Pope Benedict spoke about being co-workers in the truth. And I think really that was kind of Father McGivney's idea between the laity and the clergy. We're not on an equal level. Certainly the ordained clergy, different level. So it's not trying to grasp at a certain equality, but it's an understanding that there is a certain autonomy in the responsibility of the laity to go out and renew the world through business, through economics, through politics, through culture. All of this is in the family. It's a lay responsibility. We have to stand up, I could say, man up and do what needs to be done. The clergy doesn't have to tell us everything to do. I think this was Father McGivney's idea. Stand up, do what you need to do. Don't let people say, you're only doing it because a priest is telling you you have to do it. No, we choose to do it. We're faithful. We understand what it means to be a disciple. We're going to act like that. At the same time, to be the strong right arm of our parish priests, of our bishops, of our pope, if you will. You can't be the strong right arm if you're not intimately connected with their thinking, their guidance, their spirituality, connected with them in prayer. So you put all of that together, and I think you have, with Father McGivney's, again, I would say spiritual genius, the way forward, especially now in this century, where the role of the laity is so important in culture, and the number of ordained clergy is much less than what it used to be.
I spent some time looking over your career in preparation for this, and there are some notable themes. A charity that evangelizes, faith in action. I think it's one of your first speeches you talked about the way to express your gratitude at becoming Supreme Knight is to express it in action. So that's a key moment. Your emphasis on service and your loyalty to the papacy. But there was a kind of prophetic start to your, and if I'm being presumptuous, correct me, but Our Lady of Guadalupe. Where did that inspiration come from, which has been so formative for the order? over the last 20 years? And how have you seen it play out?
You know, St. Maximilian Kolbe said once, never be afraid of loving the Virgin Mary too much. You can never love her more than Jesus. So let's start from there in terms of the role of Mary as the perfect Christian, the perfect disciple, in the whole spirituality of a Catholic. Then look at her apparition in your culture, in your country. And there's so many places where, whether we're talking in France or Germany or Italy, so many places where she's appeared with such impact for people. You think of Lourdes, or you think of Fatima, or you think of Rue de Bac, the miraculous medal. So important. So looking at the United States, looking at North America, Canada, the United States, Mexico, where is the Marian apparition for us? What is Mary's message for us? You have to remember that Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared at a time when New Spain came up throughout much of North America, throughout the United States, the western part of the United States, even into parts of Canada. So Mexicans rightly say Our Lady of Guadalupe for Mexico, but she's also for, I think, all of North America. So why is that important for us? Because there's so many apparitions of Mary that are important. It's important for North America because her message really is a message to people in the midst of a tremendous clash of civilizations between the indigenous people and the European who had come to North America. And there she is with a message of reconciliation, a message of unity, a message of charity, a message of hope, all of which I think you begin to hear the echoes of the Knights of Columbus. Speaking to an indigenous, when now we hear so often Christianity is the imposition of a European way of thinking. Speaking to a layman, speaking to someone who was not at the top level of society, but to someone who's at the very bottom level of society. And these are all messages, right? They're all very important. And they're especially important at a part of the world in which there is this coming together of culture. There is a necessity to overcome clashes of civilization. And there is a necessity for, as we look to the future, the laity to take a greater role. And in a democratic culture where you can't just baptize the prince and then everyone else automatically follows. No, there's got to be a horizontal kind of evangelization. So this is, I think, the great message of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Of course, the image, she's pregnant, right? So there she is as a clear sign in the pro-life issue, the dignity of every life. So seemed natural to me. So the first, I brought the board of directors. We went on pilgrimage to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. I was installed there as Supreme Knight. The other Supreme officers also were installed with me. And then we began to say, look, we've got to grow the order in Mexico. We've got to reach out to the fastest growing part of the Catholic Church in the United States, which is Hispanic. So historically, one of the very important work of the Knights of Columbus has been to help integrate Catholics into American society. So asking Our Lady of Guadalupe to put the order under her protection, I thought was a very important signal for her message, as a message to immigrants coming into the culture, as a message to the church in North America. And of course, it comes after John Paul II had said in Clergy in America, we have to begin to think about the Western Hemisphere, the Catholic roots, the Christian commonality of this hemisphere. as a new world new because it was evangelized in such a way, mostly by Catholics throughout the entire hemisphere. So all very important. And so that's, I think, just a little bit of why I think Our Lady of Guadalupe is so important to the Church in North America and so important to the Knights of Columbus and really to our culture. Her message today of reconciliation and unity is needed as much today as it was when she was speaking to Aztecs and Spanish in Mexico City.
We're conducting this interview in a momentous month. Something that doesn't happen very often in our history happened this month, which was the election of your successor, the election of a new Supreme Knight. We were rejoicing, so happy to see Mr. Kelly, who we all know well, receive this honor and be elected and be chosen. You've known him for a long time. What would you say about him to the brothers, and what might you even dare say to him, that which you wish you knew when you first took over? Well, what's your word of advice?
One of the remarkable things about the Knights of Columbus over our 138 plus years history is not just that we've had good leadership, but that we've had a continuity of good leadership. And we see that in the election of Patrick Kelly, that he had the unanimous support of his officers that he works with in New Haven, as well as the unanimous appointment by the board of directors. They understand his ability to lead the order, the qualities that he brings. And so I'm very confident looking forward to the future of the Knights of Columbus with his leadership. And I think, we talked earlier about 9/11. We know that the next Supreme Knight, there will be very unexpected things that we don't see today that he will have to deal with. We don't know what they are, but we know they will come. So one of the important things in selecting a Supreme Knight is, does he have the maturity? Does he have the strength? Does he have the clarity of judgment? And does he have the ability to communicate with the members, to lead the organization forward? And can he do it not only fraternally, but in the business sense, in the charitable sense? And so I think with the designation of Patrick Kelly as Supreme Knight, we have a man who can do that and do it over a number of years. We can have confidence in his leadership.
Well, thank you, Supreme Knight, for this time. Thank you for 20 great years, and we are all grateful that you're still going to be with us on the board, offering your wisdom as we go forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot.
I'm now joined by our Supreme Chaplain, Archbishop William Laurie of Baltimore. It's great to have you with us, Archbishop. There are many things we should discuss about the past year, but I wanted to ask you something personal first. You've been serving as Supreme Chaplain, I think, since 2005. It's a decent amount of time. What are some of your personal reflections on that, especially with the changing of the Supreme Knight, Carl Anderson, who I know has been a longtime friend of yours?
First of all, it's been and remains a joy and a great honor to serve as Supreme Chaplain. I think back to the year 2005 when I started serving as chaplain, and realized that even though I'd been a knight for a long time, and my father had been a knight before me, and my grandfather before that, I really didn't have a clue about the magnificence of what it is the Knights of Columbus do for the church, not only in America, but throughout the world. And so first of all, it's been a journey of discovery. And secondly, it's been a journey of coming to know Father McGivney and knowing his vision and learning the importance of the principles that guide the order and finding out how the Knights go about fulfilling their mission, whether it's the fraternal mission or it's the insurance and financial services mission, and seeing the integrity with which that has done. And I would also say that I had known Supreme Knight Carl Anderson long before I became chaplain. I knew him from my days as a priest in the Archdiocese of Washington. I served as his state chaplain in Washington when he was the state deputy. But working with him these past 15 years, working with him in his capacity as Supreme Knight, I've really seen the epitome of what it means to fulfill one's vocation as a lay Catholic, as someone who not only knows the faith, but loves the faith, deeply understands the faith, has drawn wisdom from the faith, and that wisdom in turn guides his leadership and decisions. And I truly do cherish his friendship. He will tell you that I've offered him advice over the years, but I can tell you that he has also given me great advice in some of my challenges. Can also tell you that he has been very inspiring in the fulfillment of my own vocation. And I think that's the way it's supposed to work in the church. And I will forever be grateful for the opportunity to serve as Supreme Chaplain under Carl Anderson.
So, Archbishop, this is a webcast that's designed for our members, and I'm sure they would love to hear, were there any highlights of the last 15 years with Supreme Knight Carl Anderson, or difficult moments when our principle of fraternity really kicked in between the two of you and took what was a nice model of an organization, a great model of an organization, and made it really incarnational, made it real, because you had to weather something together or rejoice in something together?
There's been so many things. It's actually hard to know where to begin. But I think I realized at that first convention in Chicago in 2005, it began to dawn on me, A, how unprepared I was for it, and B, we had a Eucharistic Congress following that convention. And I arrived at the convention totally unaware that I was supposed to give a major address at this Eucharistic Congress. Don't ask me how I didn't know that, but I just didn't. And I guess I talked to the Supreme Knight about the fact that I had to scurry back to my hotel room and conjure something up. The moment I kind of realized just how extraordinary the Supreme Knight is when he said, well, what about the Eucharistic dimensions of the principles of our order? Charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. And it was like a light went on. And I knew exactly what I needed to go up and write. It demonstrated for me, just right out of the box, that the Supreme Knight was very much the keeper of the flame, of the Father McGivney flame.
I don't know if you're going to remember this story, but I'm going to say it anyway. You and I ran into each other at some meeting at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I asked you, I said, oh, I know you're the Supreme Chaplain. Do you like doing that? Mm-hmm. And your face got serious and said, this is one of the most important things I'm doing for the church. And I've always been intrigued by that. And I've thought, I want to ask Archbishop about that. And so now I've got you, and I get to ask you about that. Looking forward with Father McGivney, now blessed, which means he's with us, active with us, what are we seeing going forward for them? Why is it so important that the Knights do what they do?
First, I think, as I mentioned earlier, Father McGivney has always been our mentor and our guide, and whether we've known it or not, he's been interceding for us. And we've always really believed that. We wouldn't have advanced his cause for beatification if we didn't believe our founder was heroically holy, if we didn't believe that he led a life of great virtue, if we didn't believe that his life brought forth the good fruit of the gospel, not only for his people in the parishes he served, but certainly among the literally millions of knights who have been members of the order since 1882. The fruit of that is incalculable. Only the Lord knows the good fruit that has resulted from that. Well, I think now the church finds itself in a new situation. It finds itself, especially in the West, in a culture that is increasingly more secular and less religious. We're finding ourselves in a time of polarization. It's not just that people disagree with each other, it's that people don't want to seem to build bridges of understanding and friendship and fraternity. And it's harder and harder for families to stay together and to fulfill their mission. Men, young men, are looking for some sort of a lifeline to deepen their faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. They're looking for support to live their faith as Catholics. And so it seems to me that the mission, the identity and mission of the Knights of Columbus is now more important than ever. It seems to me that the Knights, which is 2 million strong, but also includes families, also includes young people in college, also includes new countries and new cultures. It seems to me that the Knights of Columbus must surely be, and has positioned itself to be, the strong right arm of the church in carrying forward the new evangelization, in helping men be men, and to be men of virtue, to be men of faith, to be good husbands and fathers. This is what Father McGivney did when he started the Knights. But we're doing this not in the industrial age of an 1880s, 1890s Connecticut. We are doing this in the postmodern world of the 2020s and the 21st century.
And we're going forward, and we have new leadership coming as of March 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Our Supreme Knight-elect, Patrick Kelly, who you've also worked with for a long time. Tell us a little bit about that, and I'm sure you're as joyful as we all are that this election has happened, but we'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, first I want to, even as I profoundly thank Supreme Knight Carl Anderson, I want to offer my warmest congratulations to our Supreme Knight-elect, Patrick Kelly. I have worked with our new Supreme Knight, our Supreme Knight-elect, for many, many years. Really, I think that God has raised up another providential leader for the Knights of Columbus. He has military experience. He has a background in law. He has a background in the theology of the family. He has a background in government. He has a deep fraternal background as a former state deputy of DC. And the fact that he has a young family and still has young children positions him for exactly the demographic we're looking to attract to the order. Without losing anybody who's currently on board with us, I think he is well positioned to speak to faithful men throughout the church who are looking for exactly what the Knights have to offer in this current context. So I'm very excited about the election of Patrick Kelly.
Viva Jesus. Thank you, Archbishop. Thank you for those words, and thank you for your time.
Most welcome.
Patrick Kelly was elected earlier this month to succeed Carl Anderson as Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus. He served as the Deputy Supreme Knight and will be the 14th Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, starting on March 1st. I had the opportunity to talk with him on his new role as leader of our order. Let's take a look at our discussion. Mr. Kelly, great to have you with us, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan. It's really great to be here.
I bet it was pretty awe-inspiring or exciting to get that phone call that said, you've been appointed.
Yeah, it was. It was a moment where you realize that that your life is changing.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Knight called me and told me about the vote of the board of directors, and I was humbled and honored by it, truly.
Well, thank you for saying yes, and thank you for being here. There's a number of things I want to talk to you about. I look forward to a lot more conversations with you as we go forward with the webcast. But I just wanted to start by taking some time to talk about Supreme Knight Carl Anderson. You've worked with him a long time. You've known him for a long time, I think. And tell me your impressions about having worked with him. When did you first meet him?
I first met the Supreme Knight in the mid-'90s, actually. I was a lieutenant in the Navy, and I had gone to sea, and for my 6-month deployment, many things happen on a deployment, but I really started to consider very seriously about getting a master's degree in theology. So I returned from my deployment, and the Navy sent me to Washington, D.C. To work, and over the course of the next year, I started to get very serious about this, and I contacted Carl Anderson, who was the dean of the John Paul II Institute at Catholic University, and I made an appointment and I went in to see him. And we had a great conversation about the program of the Institute, and so I've known him for, it's coming up on 25 years now, and I've worked closely with him for about 15 years.
What's that been like? So 15 years working closely with him. Was 20 years as Supreme Knight. Anything impress you, or what are some of the lasting impressions you have of him?
Many impressions. He's an extraordinary person to work for. And there's many qualities. I guess the thing that really strikes me is he's a visionary, right? He is a true Christian visionary in the sense that he sees around the corners and he really thinks strategically. He has a very deep love for the church and for the Knights of Columbus, and that comes out of his love for Jesus Christ. And so it really is, it's really awe-inspiring to work closely with him, because you kind of see how he thinks and how he approaches problems, and it really is a gift. It's been a gift to me, and I think a gift to all of us who have worked closely with him.
You know, one of the things about the Knights of Columbus is it's an extraordinarily complex organization. There's so many things going on. So leadership just has to be able to understand that. Is that right?
It is, and that's one of the things that's been so, I would say, wonderful about working with Supreme Knight Anderson is he has an ability to see the complexities and to manage all those complexities. As you say, Jonathan, we're a global fraternal organization with 2 million members. That's 2 million families. We are a Fortune 1000 life insurance company, but we're also an organization that is very much tied to the church, and we're in solidarity with our bishops and priests. And what this means is that there's a lot of complexity there, and he has the capacity really to see all of that and to manage those complex situations. And it really is something that I think all of us who work closely with him have learned from him about just how to do that. And I think we all come away very proud of the fact that we've worked with him for all these years, and he's been able to do such a good job at it.
Well, he's certainly accomplished a lot. Over 20 years, the number of initiatives, so many of them original initiatives, so many things he's just done that were unexpected or new. But if you were to try to sum it up, if we were to say, what is the genius or the nugget, the golden nugget of the legacy of Mr. Anderson? Does something come to mind? Is there a way you'd sum it up?
I think the genius of it is he has always brought the Knights back to our founding vision, to the founding vision of Father McGivney. And every decision he makes, he thinks about that vision, and he thinks about, does this decision further our vision? Does it push the Knights forward with this vision of strengthening the Catholic man and his family and strengthening the church? I think that is the thing that has been so I think foundational about his leadership. There's the great passage in Isaiah that says, "Look unto the rock whence ye are hewn." And I would say for the Supreme Knight, he's always doing that. He's always bringing us back to our foundational vision, and he makes us better in that regard.
You know, speaking of Father McGivney, quite a year, huh? The Beatification, this is a great thing that's happened. We look back to Father McGivney because he saw something in his own time, but there's also a future aspect to the founding, right? There's something about Father McGivney that he saw that has pointed us forward. What kinds of things can we take from Father McGivney going forward?
I think the Beatification is the Lord confirming us and confirming the generations of Knights that have gone before us in our vision, in our mission of charity, unity, and fraternity. But I also think it is our pathway forward. It's our pathway forward is the way of Father McGivney. It's deepening this sense of charity, unity, and fraternity. And I think it's providential at this moment, because I think the Lord knows that this is what we need. We need more charity, we need more unity, and we need more brotherhood. And so that's what I think the Beatification really is. It's a deepening of this spirituality.
You know, when I think about the past 3 papacies, all of which Mr. Anderson served, charity, unity, and fraternity can almost be said to characterize each of them. You know, the call to charity, the call to unity, and now the call to brotherhood in Pope Francis. So there is something prophetic. I'd agree with you on that. But before we leave a discussion of Supreme Knight Carl Anderson, I wanted to read to you from the first speech he gave to the brothers. This is a quotation he gave, and I thought it'd be appropriate given you're going to be giving your first speech to the brothers soon. So let me just read this to you, and I just ask you to react to it in light of his 20 years. In that speech, Mr. Anderson said, "The only adequate way to convey my gratitude to you is through action." Mr. Anderson has been a man of action, no?
He certainly is that. He's certainly a man of action. I would say that he's a man of what I call holy urgency. There's an urgency about him, and we all have benefited from that urgency. He wants to make the most of every moment. He wants to have the Knights be a force for good, and he really is truly a man of prayer, but also importantly for the Knights and the Church, he's a man of action.
It kind of describes what it's like to work for him. You feel that urgency, don't you? You feel like everything you need to do is important and it matters.
You sure do. Yeah, that comes through loud and clear. But I also say that I think he's built a great team, right? A great team of people around him who know that we're on a mission, that we're men on a mission, and we have important work ahead of us, and he's really led us in that regard.
So before I let you go, Mr. Kelly, I did want to ask you just 1 or 2 questions as you look ahead. And the first question I want to ask you is simply this: when did you become a knight? And what made you want to become a knight? What attracted you to the Knights of Columbus? I think you became a knight in college, is that right?
I did, yeah. I became a knight in 1983. I think I was a sophomore at Marquette University. I knew about the Knights because my grandfather was a knight and my father was a knight. So I came from a long line of knights. But what really attracted me to the Knights at Marquette was just friendship. Right? I was friends with the other college men who were in the college council. I liked them, and I really wanted that bond of fraternity with these men, because we had the most important things in common. And to me, that is something that has always been important in my life, is to have those friendships where there are things that are understood. There are things that are not up for debate, right? Because you have these important things in common. And in my life, what I have found is when I have that, and I have found it in the Knights of Columbus, the friendships really can deepen and just be very, very meaningful and quite frankly, just fun. I just enjoyed being with these men.
And this is still attractive, no? As we look forward, this is going to still be something that draws men to the Knights. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I think they will, and I think it's important for our future growth to emphasize to men that membership in the Knights is not primarily about doing something. Although doing can be important, it's primarily about being someone. It's about being a man of charity, unity, and fraternity. It's ultimately about being a man of virtue and taking care of your wife and your children and loving Jesus Christ and defending the church and doing these things that we know are so needed right now. And so I think that's key to the future of the Knights of Columbus. And this is a profound way to live out that vocation, that masculine vocation to virtue that we've all been given. I think the Knights give us an opportunity to live that out.
You know, we've had a number of conversations, Mr. Kelly, and one of the things that keeps striking me from them is just how providential it seems that this emphasis on manhood, emphasis on fatherhood, comes in the year of St. Joseph. It's almost like Pope Francis set us up for an important year. We've talked about that. I thought you might say a few of the things that you think about this year of St. Joseph.
Yeah, I've had the same thought of how providential it is this year. Interestingly, in 2013, in the first year of Pope Francis's pontificate, the board of directors met with him, and he told us to have a devotion to St. Joseph. And he said that St. Joseph embodies the manly virtues of integrity and courage and faith that we as knights need to have. And so I think this is really a way forward for us, and it's providential that this is the year of St. Joseph. I feel a great comfort that in the year of St. Joseph, I have been chosen to be the next Supreme Knight. And I think it's another aspect of that we have with Pope Francis. There's this solidarity over this tremendous figure.
Well, I'll save my next question for a later one, which is, so what has he answered? But I'll save that one for the next time we talk. Before I let you go, speaking of being a dad, I'm a dad, you're a dad, you've got young children. You're talking about these big global matters, the Knights of Columbus, Supreme Knight, but you got that call and your wife was there and your children were around. What was it like to get that call, walk out and say, honey, I just got a call, or what did the children do? Tell me about the moment when you knew you'd been appointed and how your family took it.
Yeah, so I got the call from the Supreme Knight who told me, and we talked for very briefly, and then I went and told my wife, and we gave each other a hug, and we prayed. And then I texted my mother, right? My mother is 94, she lives in Wisconsin, and I texted her, and I told her, and she said, congratulations, you'll do great. And obviously this is my mom, so she's gonna say I'll do great. But then my kids came home from school, and we told them, and they were very excited. I think the two older ones understand what this means. I think our little one doesn't quite understand, but it's an honor, I think, to serve in this position. And I think being the father of younger children, I think it puts me in a position where I understand those pressures. I understand the pressures that are on the young father who is working hard to have a healthy marriage. He's working hard to keep his children solid in the faith. And quite frankly, he's not getting much help from a culture that's trying to do just the opposite. And I think this is where the Knights can really come on strong and can really help that man with the pressures that he's under. At least that's my hope.
Well, it's been a delight to speak with you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you for the time. I look forward to having more conversations, but I also look forward to the moment when we're all back together and we get to say thank you to Supreme Knight Carl Anderson. I trust we're planning something big for that?
Well, you know what? I think what we all need to do, we need to get COVID behind us. We need to have a Supreme Convention, and we need to give Supreme Knight Carl Anderson the gratitude that he deserves at that Supreme Convention. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think I speak for the entire order when I say we're all looking forward to that.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Before we close, we wanted to share with you another part of my earlier discussion with Supreme Knight Carl Anderson. Mr. Anderson has a new book available titled These Liberties We Hold Sacred, and he shared some thoughts on it with us. As we look back at your 20 years, at your legacy, you've left a number of books behind, some very important ones about Our Lady of Guadalupe, and some that have been used in classrooms around the country. I know that, and been national bestsellers. But you have one more book, at least for the moment, that you're leaving us with. These Liberties We Hold Sacred. It just came out. Why did you write that book? I know it's a collection of things you've said. Why that collection? Why now?
Well, you know, when I became Supreme Knight, I wanted to capture an idea which I thought was very important to the whole perspective of what the Knights of Columbus was about. So the title of that book, A Civilization of Love, What Catholics Can Do to Transform the World, was focusing on charity, unity, fraternity. Now, I guess my last book as Supreme Knight is a collection of my speeches, but that also goes to this fundamental idea that was Father McGivney's really, that is Catholics, and here, you know, go back to the 19th century with Father McGivney. We have immigrants coming in, of this tremendous prejudice against Catholics, and so as a parish priest in a very important city at the time, New Haven, what was he going to do? Was he going to allow his people to be intimidated by prejudice, to kind of shrink back into a ghetto, retreat, be isolated? Or was he going to step forward with confidence into the culture, into the society, and say, we have a right to be here. We have values that are important. We're going to make a difference. We're not going to shrink back. We're going to step forward. And we're going to take our rightful place in society. So these are the liberties that Father McGivney seized, and why I thought these liberties we hold sacred was the way to project into the current national discussion the fact that religious liberty is important because people of faith have very valuable things to bring to our culture, to bring to our society. We talk a lot about church and state. Are you violating the separation, church and state? Not so much legal questions. It's more a question of the effect of faith within our culture, what the values such as charity and unity and brotherhood bring to society. And as we look around in the past year, we see terrible things as a result of the pandemic, for sure. But I think we see, in a way, worse things in our political divisions and brokenness in our communities, our cultural and social brokenness. So you have an organization here dedicated to principles of charity, unity, and brotherhood, projecting that into the culture, into society. And so I thought, put some of these thoughts together in a book, which might help some of our brother knights when they walk into questions of religious liberty or questions of what's the role in society that Catholics can play, try to make some contribution to that discussion.
Once again, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Anderson. The Supreme Knight's new book, These Liberties We Hold Sacred, is available now. It's a great book, and it belongs in the home of every brother knight. Discounts of more than 50% are available to councils and individuals placing bulk orders, and all author royalties are donated to Knights of Columbus charities. Visit knightgear.com to get your copy today. Thank you for joining us for the first episode of our new webcast series. Once again, to register for upcoming episodes, simply visit kfc.org www.nightcast.org/Nightcast. And please encourage your brother Knights to register as well. In our next episode of Nightcast, we'll be talking with Jeannie Mancini, President of the March for Life Education and Defense Fund, Supreme Director Anthony Monopoli, Chief Investment Officer and President of Knights of Columbus Asset Advisors, and Daniel Shackle, the father of the child miraculously healed through the intercession of Father McGivney. We'll also take a deeper look at the life and example of the patron of the Universal Church during this year of St. Joseph. We hope to see you then. Viva Jesu.